Welcome, everybody. We have another exciting class here in the Primal Trust Academy and Community. Today, we have another guest, and that is Tessa Malcarne, who visits us about once a month for a fun conversation. And today, we have a very juicy conversation, I think. And I'm just going to introduce that. First of all, Tessa, why don't you say hi, and then I'll introduce the conversation.
Okay. Hi, everyone. It's nice to be here. It's wonderful to be back. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation because I think it's very foundational. Like you said, Dr. Kat, it's juicy. And I think it's a topic that can create profound independence and growth within this community. So I'm excited to have this conversation.
Thank you. All right, so my screen should be shared. And we are going to be talking about codependency with coaching. I know, a very, very juicy topic and probably unsettling and a little like, oh gosh, what are they going to say? Because I just first of all want to say that this particular topic was inspired really by my own experience early on in my journey, and with my experience being a coach, and through conversations that Tessa and I have had for many years now. And I just want to say that before I get into this, everything that I will be speaking of is a trait that I had myself. So there is no shame and judgment in any of this, because I'm really telling my own story. And Tessa, I'm sure that you can talk to this, because I'm going to go through all these things. And Tessa was my first limbic system retraining coach. So she has seen me from the beginning to the end. So she's the proof. She can tell you all the secrets about how Kat was at the beginning. And so, we've both grown over the years, and now I'm on this end, and Tess and I have had some really incredible conversations about this issue that we both feel like is important to bring into the light, not to result in any shaming or any condemning or anything, but to actually help not only the clients that are listening, but any coaches that are listening to this particular program today, of how to improve what you're doing and to be more intentional about your coaching process. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to begin by introducing the topic and everything that we were thinking of around this topic. And then Tessa is going to take over and speak about it a little bit, and then we'll be able to answer questions and go into the individual aspects of this topic. Okay. So moving from codependency to becoming self-resource through proper mentoring. What does that mean? Well, here's some points that I want to bring up today that I'd like for you all to start thinking of. First of all, are you trying to be rescued, or are you trying to be empowered when you're seeking coaching or mentoring? And what is that difference? Secondly, are you seeking a sense of safety from your coach rather than your own inner adult self? Is it really the coach's responsibility to help you feel safe? Third, are you asking the same overall questions and getting the same overall answers from your coach, which is a limbic coaching loop between the client and the coach? If you were to write down everything you said and write down everything that coach said, is it pretty much the same every week overall? Are you needing an immediate response? Do you need emergency sessions on a frequent basis versus self-resourcing in crisis? Are you having issues with crossing boundaries with coaches or others when you're feeling in need, where you're wanting them to be there for you right there and then because you're in trouble, even if it's a weekend or at night or whatever? Is that happening in your experience? And are you wanting validation versus wanting solutions and direction? Are you wanting validation for your situation, like, wanting that empathy and that, which, again, I did all of these things, versus are you seeking coaching to actually get some direction? And then maybe the coach is the one that's also codependent, taking advantage of the client's neediness and limbic injury levels. And I bring this up because I see it as a huge issue in our community, that many coaches, they want sessions, and this is a very easy population to get coaching sessions with. So I bring that up on purpose. Now, your intention with your coach is crucial. Are you wanting to become self-empowered and capable? Are you wanting to help, are you wanting help to discover your own solution, which is what I would say being mentored is, or are you just wanting to be told what to do, which is enabling? Are you aware of your words in your coaching session? Are you telling your story in a way where your limbic system is listening and getting scared? Your intention matters. Are you wanting true mentoring, which allows for your own growth to become your own inner coach? Or are you wanting a quick fix, which is a short-term rescue? And just know this, a self-aware coach will not rescue you. He, she, or they will guide you back to your own inner wisdom, to your truth, and your personal power. So I just wanted to review the overall theme for today to kind of get that fresh in our mind. And from there, I'm going to pass the baton to Tessa, who has a few things to share with us today.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Yes.
That was really, it was really great for me to hear that as well.
Wait, I'm
okay.
going to pause real quick. Tessa, do you
Yeah.
mind if while your face isn't showing, that I just
Sure.
show the original slide just so it's kind of there in the background while you're talking? I think it would make just a nice backdrop. So hold on.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds good. All right. A few of you have just
Good.
joined in, and we just went through a slideshow of what we're going to be talking about today. So I'm just going to go back to a few of the main points while Tessa continues her conversation.
Actually, if you could put a picture just of my face, I would appreciate that more. Really blown up. Really?
Oh, yeah,
No, I'm kidding.
I was going to say, I don't have a picture of your face.
I'm joking. Okay. All right. So let me start by saying that I truly and wholeheartedly believe each and every one of you has an innate and intuitive ability to heal yourself. And I know, Dr. Kat, you would say the same thing. All of you can do this without a coach, without a program, without 55 books or 16 doctors and specialists. We all have this inner wisdom that guides us in our decision making, a wisdom that guides us to find the most effective tools to calm and rebalance us, and a wisdom that directs us towards being completely self-resourced and autonomous. But the limbic system creates mental clutter, and it can be difficult to see past that mental clutter without guidance from the outside, which is why we reach out to coaches and mentors. So yes, it's effective to have direction from elsewhere, but we also must recognize that if coaches are used within patterns of codependency, if they are used as an SOS call or used to calm us down, then we are not using our coaches in ways that are most beneficial to rebalancing our nervous systems, because then we're using them for purposes that actually strengthen the limbic system's belief that we are not safe. So if we are expecting coaches to answer coaching questions in their free time or schedule us in immediately, then the limbic system gets the message that our coaches are saving us, right? And that, again, contributes to the limbic system's already belief that we are not safe. And trust me, I've come to the rescue for my clients many times, but I do know that this kind of codependency does not foster independence in a way that clients need. We all need these healthy boundaries with each other in order for a coach and client relationship to thrive. So I have some ideas on how we can cultivate the healthiest and most productive coaching relationships. Dr. Kat, would you like to say anything before I continue? No. Okay. So, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was going to say, I'm good. No. Go ahead.
Okay. So, first, to set yourself up for success in a coaching call, to make sure you have an intention for the call. And of course, planned questions. And I know this is a given, but I've had many clients come to a call without a plan, and that's okay. It happens, but honestly, over preparing for questions is better than under preparing. Have one or two extra questions that aren't crucial, but if in the end we have time, they can be answered. So as for an intention, it can be as simple as, my intention is to listen and learn from my coach, or I am going into this call with the intention for it to be productive and organized, or I'm going into this call with the intention for myself to be clear and concise in my questions, to stick to the main idea of my questions, to be open and receptive to feedback, and just to like have that intention prior to the call. It gives us structure for what our expectations of ourselves are within the call. And if we don't have this intention, we may find ourselves falling back into patterns that result in a coaching call that may yield little to no productivity and feeds the limbic patterns that we're trying to eradicate and prune away. So as an example, a common pattern for clients is to tell the entire detailed story about what has triggered them, or how somebody wronged them, or how fed up they are with this person. And it's to feel validated and heard. So of course we would want to share this information and feel that support from a coach, but it is far more effective to keep stories short and to the point. And I can tell you from much experience that when clients go off into these comprehensive stories, I get lost, and then I'm not able to follow like my own guide, my coaching guide inside of my mind that really sticks to, okay, you know, what is this client needing? What does this client's limbic system needs? I get really lost in the storyline. So if you find yourself doing that, kind of rein yourself back in. Less is definitely more in those kinds of instances. If an experienced coach doesn't have all the information that they need, they'll ask. So being concise and to the point is always going to be the best way. And let me say really quickly, thinking about our primal pathways here can shed light on why we may have patterns of oversharing and wanting to be heard and validated. That herd mentality, right? It's something I talk about often with my clients, because a lot of what we do when our brain is hypersensitized, it comes from the hunters and gatherers. And in this particular case, there was a need back when we are hunting and gathering to belong, truly, because belonging equaled survival. So a lot of our needing to feel accepted and heard by others and validated is because that herd mentality is hardwired into who we are. And why I'm saying all of this is that these pathways were hardwired during a time when we needed them. But the limbic system, and we've evolved since then, right? We don't need them anymore, but the limbic system hasn't evolved, yet these pathways are still present. And because that limbic system hasn't evolved, they still feel very relevant to the limbic system. So when our brains are hypersensitized and our brains go back to like these default pathways, the pathways driven by survival that are no longer relevant, they cause us to feel desperate to be heard and desperate to be validated and desperate to belong. And if we believe them and listen to them, we really feed those very foundational limbic patterns. So just if you feel like that, like you really want to be heard, you want to explain everything in detail about a story, just think about that. Think about those pathways, kind of pull yourself out and observe what's really going on here. Put it into perspective why you're feeling that way, given the primal nature of those pathways. And then try to be heard by yourself first before the call. Try to validate yourself first before the call. And a lot of times that will work very effectively. And other times it might not, and that's okay. The idea here is that we're trying, right? In order to work towards being concise and to the point, and work towards being able to observe those patterns within ourselves. Dr. Kat, do you want to say anything before I continue? Also, please tell me if I'm rambling, just like, I don't know, stick your hand up or something.
Tessa ramble is the best. So please continue with your ramble. You're doing great.
Okay, bear with me. All right, so another unhelpful pattern I see is reaching out to coaches for the SOS call, or reaching out to a coach looking to be calmed down. So these are patterns that, again, they feed those very primal pathways. The limbic system is looking to feel safe, right? And think about what the nervous system in general wants when it is in that hypersensitized state, as it is when our nervous system / limbic system is in an imbalanced state. It wants safety. It wants comfort. It wants to be heard and validated. It wants all of those things to be done as quickly as possible, immediately if possible, right? So if we use that SOS call, or we use a call to be calmed down by someone other than ourselves, we contribute to that desire to have those safety needs met immediately, which feeds a really strong limbic pattern. And so, it's okay if sometimes we need others to make us feel safe, right? It's okay if we desire comfort outside of ourselves at times. It's okay. I need that sometimes. But if it is a pattern and it's happening consistently, and if it's turning into codependency where, and the way that you'll know is if you need someone else, right? I need my coach. And if you recognize that the vocabulary of I need, I have to, if I don't, then blank might happen. So if we are expecting coaches to comfort us and give us safety without trying to find that within ourselves first, then we're feeding into that same limbic the limbic system's perceived need that we aren't safe. And we want to pull away from doing that. So recognize if that might be you. Because if it is, you must be the one to break that pattern. And all it takes is awareness of it. That's all it takes. You'll feel that you have this like deep despair inside of you, or I need to talk to them. You'll know if it's reaching codependency rather than just like, it would be nice, to go over this with my coach. Those are two really different places to be. So Dr. Kat, I'm going to go into just some ways I've thought that clients can use coaching time together to develop skills rather than to fuel that codependency with the coach. So before I go into that, do you have anything you want to say?
Go ahead. You're on a roll.
Okay. Okay. So the whole idea of a coach in general is to give you the tools to stand on your own, right? So during the coaching call, coaches will give you all the tools that they possibly can to make you feel more independent, to be able to retrain your brain on your own. But we can't do that if clients come to a coaching call in a place where they're feeling panicked or desperate. If that's the case, nothing's going to sink in, because the prefrontal cortex at that time, that part of the brain that thinks logically and rationally, that can imagine different options, that can be creative. The prefrontal cortex in that moment, it's hijacked, and the limbic system will be driving your decision making, right? So questions will naturally come out of fear, and responses will come out of fear. And more than likely, you'll remember little of what you and your coach even spoke about in the call, because when our prefrontal cortex is hijacked and the limbic system is in control, the limbic system doesn't really care if we remember things. Oh, are you still there? Can you hear me? Somebody just beeped in. I don't know what happens to Zoom when somebody beeps in.
You're good.
So, okay, good. So questions come out of fear, responses out of fear. And so one of the most important things in my mind is to come to the coaching call in a really grounded place, at least the most grounded that you possibly can be. And, that can take 5 minutes for some, 15 minutes for others, maybe a little bit more time. That's okay. And what gets you to that place, it's different for everybody. So think about what makes you feel centered and grounded and present. And grounds you in your intention as much as you possibly can. So you're able to find as much of your logical and rational thinking as possible. Maybe you do a visualization, or take a walk, or read over your questions, or go over your intention, or maybe create your intention, or dance to music. There's so many different ways. But to just try and get into that centered place before the call. And please know that sometimes this won't be possible, and that's okay. We have to be kind and loving with ourselves about everything we do, because being kind and loving is breaking old limbic patterns. So I just want to make sure that I am in no way communicating that we have to do this or have to do that. All of my suggestions are just merely that. It's just suggestions on what we can try. And that's the best that we can do. So another thing that I think can help us to have more independence from coaches and foster our own independence is learning how to use positive, encouraging self-talk. And there's so much value in this in so many different ways. And I'm just going to touch upon it for like a minute, but I could honestly go on for like a whole hour. I won't, I promise. So I had a lovely client that I spoke with recently who had never spoken to her limbic system. And I was just really in awe of that. And I think it's relatively common, but I don't hear it a lot right now for some reason. She said that it makes her feel uncomfortable to talk to her limbic system because she's never done it. And I was just kind of reflecting on how important our relationship is between ourselves and our nervous system as a whole. Um, the way that we get to a place of having a nourishing relationship with our nervous system is to cultivate that with loving and encouraging self-talk. And eventually, once you've collected mostly all of the knowledge and understandings that you'll need from your coach, you'll be able to use this positive, encouraging self-talk to coach yourselves. It eventually replaces your coach, which is really cool. But we have to start somewhere. So if you're not doing that, what I told this client the other day was like, just start really, really small. Do not pressure yourself to begin talking in full paragraphs all day long to your limbic system. Just start really small, just with like it's okay, limbic system. It's okay. I hear you. That's it. Just really, really small. So anyway, coaches can speak from their own personal experiences, many of which are similar to what you're experiencing. And I think it helps to know that you're not alone and it feels comfortable to have another person validate your experiences, right? I totally understand how you feel. I hear you and I'm validating. It really can be an irreplaceable feeling, but it also can become addicting. So I kind of touched upon this a few minutes ago. It's really important that while we are engaging in this self-talk with our limbic systems, that we are always looking to reassure ourselves that I hear you, limbic system, and I am validating you. That works just as well as it works hearing it from a coach. And also, something that I think is important is always reassuring ourselves that what we are experiencing is normal. Even if you've never heard of it before, even if doctors are like, oh, I don't know what that is. Well, that means it's limbic, first of all, but everything you are experiencing is normal. And I used to say, this is normal. This is normal for an imbalanced nervous system or an imbalanced limbic system. I used to say it to myself every time I felt a symptom, which was pretty much all day, every day. So I would say it to myself all day long. And it was really comforting and really nourishing. And let me say really quickly, I haven't said this. I didn't use a coach because when I was rebalancing my nervous system, this was like 7 years ago, about 8 years ago. I didn't even know that coaches existed. So I really I coached myself, and it probably took a little bit longer than if I had had outside guidance, which is okay because I think it's made me a better coach myself. But I think this cultivating this relationship with my limbic system was one of the most important pieces. So, and saying this is normal, of course you would feel this way, just that reassurance of the self, so important. Dr. Kat, anything before I go on to my kind of last idea?
No, go ahead. Keep
Okay.
going.
Okay. So I think that clients need to listen to what we say with a grain of salt to keep the power in their own hands. So, when we as coaches give information and ideas to our clients, we're not looking for you to take it verbatim and apply it exactly as we say and do so in a timely manner, and do everything just as we say. We don't expect that. I I prefer if my clients listen to what I have to say, but then think about how that could work personally for them, right? How does that tool resonate within them? How does that feel on a personal level, and how can it be applied in their own specific situations? So as an example, I often tell my clients to say, I feel amazing, even when they don't. It's a bit of a brain trick. There's a lot of science behind it, and why it's so effective. But if a client begins to say that to himself or herself and it isn't quite feeling right, then that's likely intuition, right? So try something else. I feel wonderful. I am strong and resilient. I have all the strength I need within me, or I feel marvelous. There's going to be something that speaks more to yourself specifically. So, this is one way we can use coaching to develop self assurance by taking what coaches say and thinking about how it best resonates within ourselves. So, of course, what coaches have to say is important and valuable and should be respected because coaches have a lot of experience. They've spent a lot of time where their clients are at. They've trained to become a coach and then coaching, other clients and seeing their experiences. So yes, what we say is valuable, but if it doesn't always resonate within our clients, that needs to be, taken into account. And I do feel like some clients feel a pressure to listen to coaches or to a program. And Dr. Kat, we've talked about this in the first talk that we had. And that mentality of like, do as you are told. That doesn't feel good, and that doesn't cultivate autonomy within us. So, if we have that mentality, we're stripping away our independence. And one day when you are your own coach, you need that autonomy. So listen to what we have to say. Take that information and think of how you can best implement it so it becomes your choice and not just doing it because a program told you to do so, or somebody else told you to do it. And my last thought is to look within to ensure that you have really healthy boundaries with your coach. So we know boundaries are so important, right? Within ourselves, from like within a coaching client relationship. And I think it's important to ask yourself, what is a coach in my opinion? What are they designed for? Why is my coach here? What do I use my coach for? And see what you come up with. We want to make sure that we are seeing that a coach provides us with knowledge, valuable information, some tools, strategies, ideas, some outside of the box thinking, maybe an individualized and tailored approach to calming the nervous system. A coach is there to answer concise and purposeful questions that lead to a clear outcome and a clear perception of the topic. A coach can give us feedback on whether or not they believe what we are doing is most beneficial at that given time. But a coach cannot calm you. A coach isn't meant to hear lengthy, detailed stories. And let me just say that I love when clients tell me stories because I feel like then they see me as like a confidant, and I appreciate that. But I also know that I'm not doing them a service when I allow it because they're losing valuable time to hear my feedback so they can, then move forward in rebalancing with guidance. So um, a coach isn't meant to answer an SOS call or questions outside of coaching hours because that only feeds limbic patterns. So if your limbic system is saying, I need to know now or else I'm not safe, pause. Think about how you can try and use your positive self talk to talk to yourself. Think about those primal pathways I was discussing earlier and how our brain defaults to those pathways and how then that feeds the limbic system's need to have immediate assurance from others. Just think about that. Have the awareness, observe it, and pause. Don't take immediate action because when we do, then we find ourselves feeding those limbic patterns, which we do know consciously are not healthy for us. And Dr. Kat, you said this to me a couple of days ago that we've both had clients who we aren't able to get back to quickly, and a couple of days go by and then the client either says something like, oh, I figured that out myself, or
oh yeah, I don't even remember what my email is about. And you know what? That's good. That's a really good things. So as coaches, if you're a coach listening to this, which actually I haven't really addressed the coaches listening here, and I apologize for that. But think about that from a coach's perspective, and wait a little bit of time, because clients are perfectly capable on their own. They don't need you. They need you to give them some space so they can figure it out on their own, because they can and they will and they do if we give them some time. So those are my thoughts before we open up for questions, or before Dr. Kat, you continue with your thoughts. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. That was so good. I'd love for
Mhm.
you to, if you are willing, to make
Mhm.
a little list of some of those bullet points that you just mentioned that I can attach to the recording in the group.
Yeah,
I think they're great reminders,
Sure.
and you just had so many bullet points and I was trying to write them down, but
yeah,
it'd be great. I think
yeah,
the group would appreciate that. Um,
absolutely.
yeah, I love all those points, and I might take a moment to just address the coaches, because
Yeah.
there are several coaches right here on the call. And just to tell you a little bit of my story of, at one point I was the codependent one in need, Tessa being my first coach. And I grew out of that and eventually started coaching. And in my early days of coaching, I was still kind of mixed. I'd started to become self-assured. I had a lot of things to teach, but I still had some limbic patterns myself that I was not aware of until probably after about 6 months of coaching. I started to have this real aha where I recognized on the call, by the end of the call, almost always he'd be like, oh, I feel so much better. I feel so much better. This was great. And then the next call, almost the exact same routine would repeat itself. Limbic, I knew exactly what to say. I'm brilliant at calming people down. And I say that because I really had that gift, but it wasn't actually serving them. And I realized about 6 months in, I had this sinking feeling, especially after I got off this one call with somebody who I'd met with for a long time. And I was like, I am their fix. I'm their drug. Shit. And I was like, oh God, like, what do I do? Like, this is not helping them. And that's when I called my mentor, Dorothy, who, if you guys know her, she's never a fix. She is a real solid mentor. She always modeled this to me. I'm like, what am I doing? I could feel that I've become a drug here. And yes, I'm a great coach in a short-term solution, but I'm not doing something. And she helped me to see that I was answering their questions and calming them down because I wanted them to feel better. So my intention was misdirected. I wanted them to feel safe so that probably a part of me could feel safe, instead of my focus of helping them to become self-empowered, even if at the end of the call they don't feel better. I know I gave them, instead giving them um, things to do or things to think about or questions to ask, but maybe they're still stressed at the end of the call. I was trying to calm them down, which is a codependent coaching behavior. I wasn't allowing them to stay uncomfortable, but maybe have a few breadcrumbs towards their solution. Can you see the difference there? And it was an interesting thing for me to pull out of my sense of self-esteem as a coach. Like, maybe they're still in a limbic space, but I've given them some things to ponder to actually start developing self-assurance within them. And that's when I switched from coaching. I took a little bit of a kind of a break to really examine this and to understand my own method. And then I decided to become a mentor and focus as my goal as a coach. To what is a mentor? What is that? And how is that different than me just helping them with this particular challenge? And can I be okay if they're still in a limbic space at the end of the call, knowing that I'm trying to direct them back to their own self-resourcing, and maybe they haven't got it on that call, but if I become their fix, I'm keeping them from developing self-resourcing. Does that make sense to the coaches that are listening?
Yeah.
Tessa, anything?
Yeah, very much. No, I think you stated it perfectly.
Yeah. So, it's a big learning for me. And so, this topic that we're talking about, it's still a growth and process. I mean, Tessa and I all the time are calling each other up like, oh my gosh, we've got this issue. And we're learning from the clients what we need to do to model that healthy inner adult so that they can find that in themselves. And we're learning about our own boundaries by having, clients cross boundaries. So it's still a work in progress, but it's part of why I wanted to bring this into the surface for both the clients and the coaches so that we can break this codependent dynamic that I see rampant in the limbic system community with coaches and clients. It's rampant. Coaches are becoming part of the limbic loop. Would you agree, Tessa?
Yes.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Anyway, so I'm going to pause there and open it up for questions, and hopefully people are brave enough to ask some questions on this topic. So anybody have thoughts, questions? Any coaches have any thoughts, questions? Love to hear from any of you.
I have a question really quickly.
Yeah.
Is it possible for clients to remain anonymous somehow
On this
while they
part,
ask? Yeah.
I would say do it in the chat box and
Okay.
and then when you answer, just don't put their name.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Yeah, because that way it won't show up in the recording,
we'll just answer
right?
the question. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. Okay. Great.
Yeah. So.
I'd like to ask a question. It's Erica.
Hi, Erica.
Hi. I'm curious to both Dr. Kat and Tessa, if, in your early days of coaching, like, did you ever have thoughts or feelings that you didn't really know what you were doing at times? You know what I mean? Like when you were maybe on a call with somebody and you were like, you know what? Okay, I'm going to start coaching and this is what I want to do. But had a lot of doubt or insecurities or kind of the whole like, what am I doing? And do I know what I'm doing? Kind of thing. If you can speak to that, that would be helpful.
I can, or Tessa, either.
Yeah, you can go first. It doesn't matter to me. Okay.
When you think that you have to figure out their problem, that's going to be stressful. That's not your job. Your job is to point them back to their wisdom. And if that intention is clear, it's not rocket science. It's just reflecting to them where they might have some blind spots and where, what might help them get from point A to point B. If you feel like it's your job to fix them or to solve this very complex situation, you're going to stumble. So it's your own intention as a coach that you need to be clear on. And, most people in here have had enough of their own have enough experience where you can help guide people back to their wisdom if you start from that mindset. So that's what I'll say. Tessa?
Yeah, that's a great answer. So I think that because I was my own coach and didn't use really many other resources even, the way that I coached myself was I always went back to, okay, from the science that I know about the nervous system, about the limbic system, what is happening? So, given that I am feeling this way or experiencing this in my thought patterns, I'm reacting this way in a close relationship. Why is my brain doing that? From a primal perspective, from when we are hunting and gathering. I know my brain is hypersensitized. So why is it acting this way? And when I did that, I found that I was always able to pull myself back and observe the issue at hand and come up with a solution that was logical and rational. Because when you do that as well, when you pull back and you look at the science of what's happening in your brain and in your body, and and you observe that, you take away the emotional charge that you're experiencing. And so I think that, you know, as a person who is looking to try and coach themselves out of a situation, if you always go to the science, you're always going to be able to come up with a logical solution. And as a coach, if you can talk to your clients about, okay, this is why your brain is doing what it's doing, either right now in this moment or when we were hunting and gathering, then I have always found that there's always an answer. So if you have doubt and insecurities and you're unclear of what to say, okay, well, think about the science. Why is this happening to them? What is their brain doing? And there will always be an answer there. And that can always also help them, like you were saying, Dr. Kat, guide them back to their own wisdom, because it teaches them, okay, this is what's happening in my brain and in my body. For next time I recognize this, I label it as this science, and I know exactly what to do. That's how I always look at it.
So there's a question in the chat box. Can you give an example of how you talked through that?
How so? Like how I would talk through the science of it?
Sure. If Sherilyn, if you want to ask more specifically so she can answer.
Yes. So I love that, Tessa, by the way, because I haven't actually done any coaching really. And I love how you're saying like you use the science. So could you give an example, like if you had anxiety or something in life happen, like what would you say to yourself and how did that feel in your body? And just a better way so I can get a better understanding of like exactly what that looked like for you.
Yeah, so I think there's, probably 1,000 examples that I could use. So let's say I was feeling anxious about going to a doctor's appointment. So going back to the science of being anxious about something in the future, let's go back to when we were hunting and gathering and think about why our brain would be anxious about something in the future. Well, I had some experiences in those same kinds of circumstances that upset me, that caused me to feel fear or caused me anxiety. And when we have experiences that become traumatizing or stressful, the brain really wants to remember those experiences. When we were hunting and gathering, that's how the brain designed itself. That's how the brain evolved, right? It evolved to remember traumatizing experiences so it then can protect you from it happening again. So if you stumble upon a snake den, you're always going to remember that that snake den is there, so that in 2 weeks, you don't go back there and endanger yourself. So my brain was protecting me in the same way it would protect me from a snake den, from going to the doctor in a couple of days, because I've had stress in that situation in the past. So going back to those primal pathways makes me realize, okay, that's what my brain is doing and why. It takes the emotional charge away. So then I can recognize, okay, I need some affirmations, or I need to do some deep breathing in this moment right now and tell myself you are perfectly capable of going to the doctor. You can handle any situation at hand. You are strong and confident. Or you can talk to yourself about, what happened in the past with, I like to tell my clients to label the emotion, then validate how you're feeling and get your limbic system to feel heard and validated. So then you can tell your limbic system, but limbic system, listen to this other way of thinking about it. So that would sound like, I'm feeling really scared about going to this doctor's appointment. I feel really anxious. I don't like this feeling. Of course you would feel that way, given what happened a few months ago, but listen, this is a new experience. You are a new version of yourself now. You have so many tools and abilities that you didn't have back then. You have so many new understandings. You are, so intelligent and you can so handle this. So then you can use that tool as well. Sorry, I kind of rambled there. I apologize.
Good.
Hope that was at least a good example.
It was. I put it in the chat too. That was amazing. Thank you so much.
Good. Yes, of course.
Never too much of Tessa's rants.
You're too kind.
Oh, and who else? Any thoughts? Any questions? Any coaches with any questions? This is your time.
Mhm. If we have a, go ahead.
No.
I was going to say, oh, is there a question? Because if there's not, I was going to say I have just a thought, but if there's a
Go
question,
ahead.
we'll go there first.
No, go ahead.
So just in the past, like 3 weeks or so, maybe month or a little bit longer, actually, I've had some clients recently, either emailing me, WhatsApping me and saying, you made me realize in my last coaching call that I actually do have the tools within me, or that I actually have the ability to handle this coming situation on my own. So I would like to push my coaching call out a couple weeks or 3 weeks. And I just wanted to say that, like, that feeling to me is so incredible, to know that I have given my clients tools, to then come around and realize that they can do this on their own. So this kind of goes back to the first question of, having doubts and insecurities in your coaching. Well, then you have clients coming back and saying, you know what, I don't need that coaching call. I'll wait. And I had this happen, in so many different ways with so many clients. I don't know if it's because you and I had been talking about it, Dr. Kat. It's like the power of the universe. What you talk about then comes back to you. But it was really interesting, and I hadn't told you that. And I think it's inspiring, and it's inspiring to everyone, hopefully, to hear that will happen to everyone at a certain point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We got a couple questions.
Yeah.
Karina, and then there's a couple in the chat box.
Hi, I'm wondering, so as you guys are talking about this, it like the idea of kind of the therapeutic relationship came to mind for me. And I guess I'm not sure how to phrase this question, but I know that limbic system coaching is not therapy. But I also know that, like, the therapeutic relationship can be really important for healing. And I don't know, I'm interested in your thoughts on that. And also, I guess, thoughts around, like, if I totally agree that if you need reassurance repeatedly over and over again, that's definitely feeding a limbic pattern. But I've definitely had experiences where I just got reassurance once and it was very, very impactful. And I'm wondering if you agree that that's a positive form of reassurance from coaching, if it's just like a one-time thing.
Tessa?
Yeah, I'll say that I believe that needing reassurance once is completely acceptable and healthy. Needing to hear that something is normal. I experienced this the other day. Is that normal? A lot of times clients will hear that once and never need it to hear it again. But if they're needing to hear it repeatedly, and I repeatedly go back to the science of why they are experiencing that symptom or whatever it may be, then that's when it becomes that codependent relationship. But reassurance once, needing to hear something one time, that's perfectly healthy, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. I agree 100%.
Yeah.
The therapeutic relationship question, it's a good question.
Yeah.
And I think that a coach or a mentor is not a mother or a significant other or a bond that sometimes people are trying to seek from that relationship. So my question first of all would be, what is your definition of a therapeutic relationship, meaning that it's healing? And to recognize what has felt like for me in the past is that some people want that relationship with their coach to be that a secure attachment in a way that is outside of the boundaries of a coach-client relationship, like meaning, they're my friend, I should be able to call them when I want, when I have a hard time, etc. That's not appropriate for a coach-client relationship. So first of all, it's like, what is your idea of a therapeutic relationship? And is that particular person the right setting for that relationship? Now, that doesn't mean you don't, seek a type of therapist that may have more availability to, I don't know, have that kind of a dynamic. I don't know that that's that healthy, but I would just say, maybe I'll ask you, what is it that is a therapeutic relationship to you that you're wondering about? How does that apply with coaching?
I guess I was just curious about your thoughts. I'm not thinking of it in terms of like frequency or depth of connection like that. I agree. That's definitely outside of the bounds. Even if it was a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking of it as like the supportive aspect of having someone who is like, when you're in contact with them, like when you're on a coaching call, they're reassuring, they listen, empathetic, that kind of thing. I feel like that's a helpful part of the process.
Yeah, it is. And it's a very fine line when that person becomes the source of reassurance, or the source of your validation, or the source of empathy. And one of the things that we learn in the Primal Trust mentorship is that we're trying to develop this inner validation, this inner self-resourcing, while being connected to community, to mentors, to coaches. So it takes discernment there to recognize, am I still trying to, it's not about not having that beautiful relationship where it's very collaborative and cohesive, but if the energy is about, I need to be reassured by them to be okay, I would question that. I would question that a little bit. Tessa, do you
Okay.
Yeah, like you said, I think it's all about, listening within. And like I said earlier, if you need something from your coach, right?
Yeah.
Because then that fosters that codependency. But if you're needing the reassurance once, or just it feels nice to have the empathy, and it feels nice to be heard, then there's a difference there. Because I would say I'm very empathetic on coaching calls, and I definitely reassure, and I listen intently to my clients. But when it becomes those patterns where I'm noticing that clients are asking the same things over and over, I don't need to go into all of the ways, but then it's like, yeah, there's possible boundaries being crossed here, or this is not healthy for the client. But yeah, empathy, having reassurance, I think that's very healthy.
And I think for me, like when I know that relationship has an energy that's not in that needy codependency, my ability to be even more present and empathetic expands tremendously, because I don't have a boundary up of sensing that there's a need there. So there's a more of a harmonious relationship. So the more that a client is like, here are my struggles, and here's where I want, I'm having this struggle and I want to go here. Can you help me to see how to get from here to here? It's a healthy dynamic of can you help me get from here to here, instead of like, oh, I'm suffering so much, I just need. There's a difference there. And in that energetic difference, I open and I'm able to meet them more heart to heart, because it's not violating my own boundary system energetically to serve that person.
Yeah. And it's not I need you to fix me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Instead of, it's like, how can we co-create some solution together here in this situation?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yeah, but I've been on the other end. I mean, everything I'm speaking to, I was needy as they get. Okay, there's a couple other questions in the chat box. Tessa, I don't know if you've seen these.
I have not, sorry.
Okay, Laura asks, how would you manage someone who talks and talks and ends up consuming all the time in a coaching session?
Yeah.
I think you talked about it earlier, about the concise question.
Yeah. I often, if somebody is in like crisis, then I'm really, really gentle about it. If I'm really comfortable with the client, then I'll go about it in a different way. But I would say in general, I would just ask them to pause, And I would say, okay, so I hear that this happened and that happened. I might even say, I'm getting a little bit lost in the story. Like, if you could tell me clearly and concisely what your question is here, because I think I have enough of the background information. Let's get on to, thinking about where we go from here, or some possible tools to use here. And I think it's just all about the way that you would structure how you're talking to the person about it. It can always be done in like a gentle and caring way. What would you say, Dr. Kat?
Sometimes I use it as a teaching opportunity, where the first time they've done that, maybe that will happen. And then there's not a lot of time at the end. And I'll say, there's a lot I'd like to say here, but I wasn't given the space to say that. Next time it might be, and so there's a consequence. So that's one way. Like, I'll let them have that experience, because I want them to see that in the end, they got less out of the session because of taking up almost the entire session telling their story, and using that as an opportunity to say, next time, here's how we could structure it. Sometimes I will interrupt. So it just kind of depends. Like, it's sort of like, what needs to be done here? Do I need to let this happen and then say something, or do I interrupt? And I think you just kind of have to make that call, based on intuition in the moment.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
Yeah. And sometimes people do need to just have one person where they finally tell their story, and I can discern that, and I let that happen too. So, it runs the gamut there. It's more of a discerning thing. Like, well, this person actually hasn't been heard, and I'm going to just listen and allow that to be their therapy, because it is therapeutic, because, I can tell that they haven't been heard. So it's not always a bad thing, but now if that happened every session, then that's something else.
I've been there as well, and I completely agree with that. You can tell if the person needs to be heard, and they've never been heard before. That's important for them. That's important. That's an important part of their healing process.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a handful of questions. I don't know if we can all of them, but let me see.
We can go quickly.
Okay. Let's see here. Rena, can you speak to the difference between offering compassion, which builds interdependence, and reassurance, which continues the codependency? Compassion is a state of presence, an energetic presence that I think can be there throughout, whether you are instructing or interrupting or whatever. I mean, it's like I've said, sometimes I'm like, look, I've been just like this. Like, I get it. You're scared. And here's how we need to move forward in the rest of the session. And it's an energy inside of you as the coach of recognizing, am I in compassion, but helping to reflect to them what they need to build self-assurance, or am I just trying to help them feel better? Like I said earlier, you can feel, if in your own intention, like, oh gosh, I feel like I need to make them feel better, you're offline and your energy there. Let's see, there's another question. Tessa, how do you handle if somebody drops away, and perhaps then you're having a mix of emotions, or perhaps feeling dumped? Perhaps you feel like you failed, but also maybe knowing they're going away without receiving all the help you had in mind. Maybe you felt like they needed, and maybe they are going away without what they need. Sounds like a tricky breakup. Any thoughts?
I would say that they're on their own journey, and you need to let them go and find their own way. And they will eventually see what you're seeing from the coach's perspective, that, they need these tools, but they're not going to find it by being told that they need it, right? So they will find their way, and you just have to know that, just as we all have found our way, right? We all stumbled and dropped off and came back, or found a different way, and everybody will find their way in this healing journey.
And also know that you might not be the perfect resonance for them, and good for them if they, if someone falls away from me, I'm like, I hope they find someone that is a better fit for their particular energy, their frequency. And it's not a reflection that I'm a bad coach or that I did something wrong. It just might be, wrong wrong fit, and that's okay too. Or sometimes they need to go on another journey and then they come back, and that actually happens more often than not. But got to trust their own inner wisdom that, yeah, maybe you could have helped them, and maybe that help can come from somebody who can speak their language a little more perfectly for them.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. Let's see here. Okay. Nikki, what do you recommend your clients to do at a minimum per day to help rewire? I have a few clients that struggle with compliance. They're overwhelmed with doing rounds, etc. per day. We've talked about this one, I think, in class one, our first class together. But I'll let you answer.
I could talk about that for a long time. I would say I never tell clients how much to do at a minimum, but I will look at, where they're at right now, because I have clients who are really at that peak of having a rebalanced nervous system, and it's only, a couple times a day where they're having to catch their negative or unwanted thoughts. And so those clients are very different than clients who are just starting out on their journey. So somebody who's just starting out, gosh, this is so hard to answer quickly. I would say look at each client individually, look at where they are at. You kind of have to do like a little, what's the word I'm looking for, Dr. Cat, like take their vitals.
Yeah, a personality assessment.
Yeah, like an assessment, assess. And I always have an intuitive sense of like, here's what you'll need in nourishment in a typical day, but it's going to be so different for every client. I wish I could answer that quickly. I'm sorry.
I feel the same way. I really hate giving these standards because they become limbic standards in the community. And it's another big issue. And I agree that it depends on the personality, because some personalities, when you give them a standard, they have enough of a rebel archetype that they won't do it. So you have to be tricky. And I tend to teach principles and help them find creative ways to implement those principles for their particular personality, rather than giving them, you need to do this and not do that, because there's a part of them that just like you're setting them up for failure by giving them a rule. So you just got to work with the personality.
Yeah. And if they're non-compliant, quote unquote, then there's a reason why the limbic system is resistant to wanting to change, right? So I would go into that conversation like, oh, I see that you're having difficulty implementing this idea that we discussed. Like, let's talk about why your limbic system would have resistance here. And there's a multitude of reasons, but, it does go back to the hunter and gatherer brain, or it does go back. There's, there's ways that we can describe that to that specific client to get them to see, oh my gosh, it's my brain, it's not me. That can be a hurdle in and of itself, right? To see it's not me. Oh, it's not me. Okay, well, I can do something with that. Whereas prior to now, I thought there was something wrong with me and I couldn't do. It's not that the client doesn't want to, right? It's that they feel like they can't, or their brain is resisting, and that feels really hard. So I would also have that discussion.
That's really great. Yeah, excellent point. Well, I think we are going to wrap up. This has been a great hour. Thank you, everybody who came. I hope that anybody have any last thoughts or comments. I hope this was helpful. And like I said, I really don't want any of these messages to sound condemning or shaming. Truly, it's almost all of us have exhibited some of these traits. All right. And it's just common. It's just part of it, but we're just highlighting it so that we can choose differently or have higher intentions in the process of coaching going forward. Any last words?
Yeah. No, I think, oh, go ahead.
Oh yeah, please do.
Sorry, I thought you said any last words of anybody.
Yeah, sure. You too.
Okay. I just wanted to say thank you. I know Tessa, and I'm getting to know Dr. Cat, and I really value, as someone that's rewiring their brain, hearing the other side of what coaches see, because it really helps me understand, the levels of codependency that I've had, not only with a coach probably, but with other people in situations where, you find yourself like needing a phone call or anything to sort of to fix. And so it's really validating to hear just how that can be changed and to see where that's coming from on a limbic system impairment level. And that it really is just like a survival mechanism and that we can do this ourselves.
Mm.
So thank you.
I'm so glad.
That's, go ahead, Dr. Kat.
I was just going to say, and you know, we're not saying like reaching out for coaching is like negative in any way, but in that desire, in that like, oh, I'm kind of wanting a fix, even pausing, what is a higher intention for this call? I can feel this desire for wanting a fix and reassurance, but you know, just pausing, what's something even greater I could get out of this call? And you know, and let that what's something even greater? How can I get from point A to point B? And maybe I don't feel safe at the end of the call, but I have a plan. And that is a higher pathway in your brain that's working prefrontal rather than just calming the primal programming that Tessa's describing. So yeah, thank you for that comment, Tessa.
Yeah. No, I think actually that really summed it up quite well. And I just want to say thank you all for having me. It was really wonderful to be here again.
We love you, Tessa.
Yay, love you
about once a
guys.
month.
Thank you.
So we'll
Yay.
come up with another juicy topic next month.
Absolutely.
All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you. The recording should be available within the day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.